My name is Emma Carter. I was 28 years old the day I realized my family had never been afraid of losing me. They were afraid of what I knew. The truth hit me 3 weeks after the accident, when I opened my eyes in a hospital room that smelled like bleach, plastic, and old fear. My throat burned. My ribs felt like broken glass. I could hear a machine beeping beside me, steady and cruel, like time had kept moving without asking whether I wanted to stay. And the first thing I heard was not, "Thank God she's awake." It was a nurse whispering outside my door. Her mother already signed it. She was supposed to be gone. That was the first crack. The second came when I saw my mother's face. Elaine Carter stood at the end of my hospital bed with both hands wrapped around her purse strap, like she was attending the wrong funeral. My sister, Olivia Bennett, stood beside her, perfectly dressed, perfectly composed, eyes red enough to suggest tears, but not swollen enough to prove them. And behind them was my stepfather, Victor Carter, staring at me the way people stare at a bill they thought had already been paid. No one moved toward me. No one cried. No one touched my hand. I was the one who spoke first, my voice scraping out like it hurt to exist. "How long?" my nurse answered before my mother could. 18 days. 18 days. 18 days between life and death, and my family looked less relieved than inconvenienced. That should have told me everything. But when you grow up inside a house where love always comes with conditions, you spend half your life explaining away the blade before you admit you've been cut. My family liked to say we were old-fashioned, respectable, faith-centered, generous. The Carter name meant something in Willow Creek, especially because my grandmother, Jasmine Carter, had spent 40 years building that reputation with her own hands. She was the kind of woman who remembered waitresses' names, who mailed birthday cards with $5 bills tucked inside, who could silence a room just by lifting her eyes. People loved Grandma Jasmine. People trusted her. And that was exactly why my mother used her name like a weapon. You see, when people looked at our family from the outside, they saw polished wood floors, holiday dinners, pressed clothes, smiles in church pews, and my mother's soft voice telling people how blessed she felt. What they did not see was how every blessing in our house came with an invoice. Olivia got praise because she performed well. I got responsibility because I obeyed well. Olivia was the daughter my mother displayed. I was the daughter she used. I was the one who stayed late after Thanksgiving to wash pans the size of car tires while everyone else laughed in the living room. The one Grandma trusted to drive her to appointments. The one who checked her medications, fixed the porch light, brought her soup, listened when she wanted to talk about the past, and listened even more carefully when she didn't. I wasn't bitter then. That's the embarrassing part. I thought I was being good. I thought love was supposed to feel like earning your place at the table over and over again. By 26, I was working as a cardiac step-down nurse at North Star Medical Center. Long shifts, night rotations, coffee that tasted burnt no matter where you got it. I had student loans, a used car, and exactly enough pride to pretend I was doing fine. Meanwhile, Olivia had married Jonathan Bennett, moved into a beautiful house in Ashford Heights, and posted family photos that made strangers write comments like, "Goals. She and I were not enemies." Not exactly. We were worse than enemies. We were trained. She was trained to take. I was trained to give. The only person who ever looked at that dynamic and called it what it was Grandma Jasmine. "Your mother mistakes control for love," she told me once on her porch, the summer before she died. It was hot that day. Cicadas screaming, lemon tea sweating in 2 glasses. Her hands trembled a little when she lifted hers, but her eyes were clear. She thinks if she arranges everyone just right, no one can leave her. I laughed softly. That sounds like a sad way to live. Grandma looked at me for a long moment. It is. And sad people can do very dangerous things when they think they're entitled. At the time, I thought she meant money. I did not know she meant me. If this kind of family story pulls at something inside you, stay with me, because what happened next is where everything broke open. 2 months before my accident, Grandma Jasmine called me over to her house in Brook Hollow. She said she had a folder for me. Not urgent, just important. That was how she said things when they were more serious than she wanted to admit. When I got there, my mother's car was in the driveway. That never meant peace. I walked in and found Elaine standing in the kitchen, jaw tight, arms crossed. Olivia sat at the table looking down at her phone. Grandma Jasmine was in her chair by the window, pale but upright, one hand resting on a closed leather folder in her lap. "You're late," my mother said. "I came right after work." "You always have an excuse ready." Grandma Jasmine did not raise her voice. She never had to. "Elaine, enough." The whole room went still. My mother pressed her lips together and stepped back, but the hatred in her face flashed so quickly that if I had blinked, I would have missed it. Grandma motioned me over. "Sit down, Emma." I sat. She placed her hand on the folder but did not give it to me. "If anything ever happens to me," she said carefully, "there is someone you need to call. His name is Adrian Cole." I frowned. "Who is Adrian Cole?" "My attorney." My mother's head snapped up. Grandma continued as if she hadn't moved. "He has instructions. He knows what belongs to whom. And Emma, listen to me carefully now. If they rush you, if they pressure you, if they tell you something must be signed immediately, you do nothing until you speak to him." The room felt colder. My mother laughed, but it came out thin. "Honestly, Mother, this drama is unnecessary." Grandma ignored her. She looked only at me. "Promise me." "I promise." She nodded once, satisfied, then pushed the folder toward me. "Good." I reached for it, but my mother moved faster. "What's in there?" Grandma's eyes sharpened. "Not yours." No one spoke after that. 3 weeks later, Grandma Jasmine was dead. And 3 months after that, I was driving home in the dark after a double shift when a black SUV crossed the line and hit me so hard I never saw morning. At least, I wasn't supposed to. I don't remember the impact. I remember rain on the windshield. I remember red taillights ahead of me smearing like wet paint. I remember thinking I needed to call Grandma's house the next day, even though some childish part of me still forgot she was gone. Then nothing. The missing part of my life had to be told back to me in pieces, and every piece felt like something ripped from somebody else's body and stitched onto mine. The driver who hit me was drunk. He fled on foot but was caught 2 blocks away. My left lung partially collapsed. My spleen ruptured. I had internal bleeding and swelling around the brain. They rushed me into surgery once. Then they realized I needed a second procedure, a specialist, and more time than my body seemed willing to give. Because I was unconscious, the hospital contacted my next of kin. That should have been me protecting myself years earlier. It wasn't. I had never updated the file after moving out. So the call went to my mother. Elaine Carter arrived first. Not Victor. Not Olivia. Elaine. Later, one of the ICU nurses told me my mother did not ask, "Will she live?" She asked, "How bad is this going to get?" At first, I thought the nurse meant emotionally. She did not. She meant financially. That was the moment the story stopped being a tragedy and became a calculation. According to the notes later read back to me, the surgeon explained that I needed another intervention. It was risky, but not hopeless. They needed authorization. Insurance would cover part of it, but not all. There would be a recovery. There would be bills. There would be uncertainty. My mother sat there listening. My stepfather asked 2 questions. "How much?" "And if she codes?" When the doctor answered, my mother asked for privacy. The doctor refused. That refusal likely saved my life, because what Elaine Carter said next was heard by 3 staff members, documented by 2, and remembered by all of them. "She would never want to live dependent," my mother said. That was a lie. Then Victor said, "If there's very little chance, prolonging this may be selfish." That was also a lie. Then my mother, in a voice so calm it made my nurse sick later just repeating it, said, "We should let her go with dignity." Let her go with dignity. It sounds graceful when people say it slowly, but there was nothing graceful about what came after. My mother signed the form that limited resuscitation if I crashed before the second procedure could begin. She signed it with a steady hand. She did not ask for a chaplain. She did not ask to see me. She did not stand beside my bed and pray over my body. She signed, thanked the staff, and walked out to the parking lot with Victor. Olivia arrived 40 minutes later. And she knew. That part mattered more to me than I can explain. Because betrayal from cruelty wounds you one way, Betrayal from silence wounds you differently. She knew. She said nothing. I did not survive because my family changed their minds. I survived because one woman paid attention. Her name was Hannah Moore, charge nurse, 53 years old. Southern accent softened by years up north. Sharp eyes. No patience for performance. She had seen me work on step-downs several times because our units shared float nurses during shortages. She knew I was stubborn, over-caffeinated, reliable, and the kind of nurse who stayed past shift change if a patient was scared. Hannah did something my own mother did not bother to do. She looked at my employee file. And there, buried in the paperwork, was the name I had written 2 years earlier after a training seminar on advanced directives. Noah Brooks. Not a husband. Not family. My best friend. My oldest friend, really. We met at 19 in anatomy lab when I dropped my notes. He laughed, then helped me reorganize my entire semester like it was a military operation. Noah remembered deadlines, anniversaries, pharmacy refill dates, and every time I pretended I was fine when I wasn't. He was living in Seabrook by then, working nights in emergency dispatch. Hannah called him at 11:42 p.m. He answered on the first ring. She told him I'd been in a major accident, that my mother had signed a limited code decision before the second procedure, that his name appeared as my authorized healthcare proxy. Noah did not ask whether it was serious. He asked, "How long do I have to get there?" That question still undoes me. He drove through storm traffic and got to the hospital in under an hour and a half. He had a copy of the proxy in an old email folder because he was Noah and that was the kind of thing Noah saved. He overrode my mother's decision. He demanded every possible intervention within medical judgment. He sat beside my bed while they wheeled me back in. He was there when my mother left. He was there when my body gave medicine another chance. When people ask me later what saved me, they expect me to say strength or luck or faith. The truth is simpler. I was saved because someone who loved me bothered to show up correctly. If you're still here, comment, "Show up," because that's the difference between love and image. One performs, the other stays. I woke 18 days later. By then, my mother had already started telling people a version of the story that made her sound devastated and noble. At church, she said she barely left the hospital. To neighbors, she said the doctors had prepared her for the worst. To Olivia's social circle, she said trauma had a way of exposing what really mattered. That last one makes me laugh now. Because what really mattered to my mother had always been the same thing: control. The second day after I woke up, Noah came in carrying a paper cup of terrible coffee and a face that looked like it had forgotten sleep. He smiled when he saw me, but the relief in him was so raw it almost hurt to witness. "Hey, Trouble." I tried to smile back. "You look awful." "That's the Emma I know." He sat down, and for the first few minutes, we said almost nothing. Some people think the deepest relationships are built on the biggest words. They are not. They are built on safe silence. Eventually, I turned my head enough to look at him fully. "My mom signed something." He froze. Not because he was surprised. Because he realized I already knew. "Who told you?" "No one had to." I swallowed. I saw her face. He looked down at the coffee cup in his hands. "Emma, tell me the truth." And Noah did. He told me about Hannah. About the file. About the form. About the way my mother described letting me go like she was discussing weather. About Olivia standing in the hall with tears on her face and no protest in her mouth. He told me everything except one thing. I could tell he was holding something back the same way you can tell there's a storm behind a closed window. "What else?" He was quiet for a beat too long. "Emma, while you were out, your family went to Grandma Jasmine's house." The monitor beside me kept beeping. I stared at him, and they changed the locks. For a second, pain vanished. Not because I felt nothing, because rage made room for nothing else. "They what?" He looked at me steadily. "And I think that's only the beginning." That was the moment I remembered the folder. And the name. Adrian Cole. I called Adrian Cole from my hospital bed with one hand shaking and the other strapped to an IV. His voice was low, measured, the kind lawyers get when they've spent 20 years listening to people panic and have learned not to join them. "Adrian Cole." My name is Emma Carter. My grandmother was Jasmine Carter. Silence. Then very quietly, Emma, I have been trying to reach you for weeks. That sentence alone told me my family had already moved faster than grief should allow. I closed my eyes. I've been in the hospital. His voice changed, not softer exactly, but more precise. Can you speak privately? Yes. Noah stood and shut the door. Adrian did not waste time. Your grandmother updated her estate documents 8 months before her death. She came in alone, very clear-minded, very firm. She told me she expected resistance from her daughter if certain assets did not pass the way your mother expected. I let out a slow breath. What assets? Her house in Brook Hollow, a trust account, some investment instruments, personal letters with explicit delivery instructions. My ribs hurt when I inhaled. I inhaled anyway. And? And she left the house to you, solely. The trust to you, solely. I turned my face toward the ceiling and laughed once, sharply, because suddenly so many years made sense in one ugly rush. My mother's impatience. Olivia's visits increasing near the end. Victor asking Grandma strange questions about property taxes and upkeep, and whether she had made practical arrangements. They had all assumed the same thing. That blood would move upward toward the ones who demanded it, not downward toward the one who stayed. Adrian kept speaking. After probate was initiated, certified notices were sent. Several were returned. There was also a voicemail claiming you had relocated and wished to have all matters routed through Elaine Carter for convenience. Elaine said that? I cannot prove who left the message. But yes, that was the representation. I almost smiled. Of course it was. My mother had never believed boundaries applied to her. She believed access was her birthright. The house, I said. Noah told me they changed the locks. Adrian paused. Then he asked a question that made my skin go cold. Emma, have you signed a power of attorney recently? No. Any transfer authorization? Deed paperwork? Estate paperwork? Anything? No. A longer silence this time. When he spoke again, his voice had acquired that hard-edge professionals get when suspicion becomes conclusion. Then we may have a very serious problem. He explained it in clipped, careful terms. Someone had filed paperwork purporting to give Elaine Carter temporary authority over estate-related property maintenance pending beneficiary recovery. That alone was questionable. More troubling, there was a secondary filing in motion, one that suggested occupancy control and financial access were being reorganized for family stewardship. I did not understand every legal phrase. I understood the meaning. My mother was trying to take Grandma's house before I got out of a hospital bed. Can she do that? No, Adrian said. Not legally. The word legally sat between us like a fragile object, because both of us knew that people like Elaine didn't ask whether they should. They asked whether anyone would stop them in time. What do you need from me? I asked. First, I need you alive, alert, and documented. Second, I need a statement that you have not authorized any transfer or representation. Third, I need you not to confront your family until I see the full filing trail. I let out a bitter breath. You already know them, don't you? Adrian did not answer immediately. I know your grandmother was afraid of exactly this. When I hung up, Noah was standing by the window, arms folded. Well? They're stealing from me. He gave one hard nod, like he had expected nothing better. That afternoon, Hannah came in during shift change and leaned against the doorframe. You look meaner, she said. I just found out my family raided my dead grandmother's house. Hannah's expression didn't move. There she is. I smiled despite myself. Then she handed me a sealed envelope. What's this? Someone dropped it off at reception this morning. Said it was only for you. My name was written across the front in handwriting I would know anywhere. Grandma Jasmine's. I stared at it so long Hannah finally said, You want privacy? No, stay. Noah stayed too. My fingers trembled when I opened it. Inside was a short letter, written in the slightly slanted script that used to sign birthday cards and grocery lists and notes in recipe books. Emma, if you are reading this, then two things are true. I am gone. And your mother is already moving faster than grief should allow. I had to stop there. Noah looked away. Hannah pretended to be studying the IV pump. I kept reading. I loved Elaine once in the easy way mothers love daughters before they understand what fear and pride can turn into. She has spent too many years believing what is mine is hers, and what is yours can be negotiated. Do not negotiate. You are not difficult. You are not selfish. You are not a burden. Those are words weak people use when kindness in others makes them feel smaller. The house is yours, because peace should finally belong to someone who knows how to keep it. Trust Adrian. Trust your own memory. And if the day comes when the truth must be spoken out loud, speak it without shaking. I should have protected you sooner. Forgive me for that. Love, always, Grandma Jasmine. By the time I finished, I was crying so hard I had to press the heel of my hand against my mouth to keep from making noise. Not because she left me the house. Because she saw me. Do you understand the difference? Being given something feels one way. Being known feels entirely different. For years, I had lived inside my family's version of me. Too sensitive, too intense, too loyal, too hard to please, never quite enough unless I was useful. And here, in one page, Grandma Jasmine had done something no one else ever had. She told me who I really was. That night, my mother came to visit. She brought flowers too bright to be sincere and one of those soft voices people use when there's an audience nearby. Oh, sweetheart, you look better. I looked at her over the tray table. You changed the locks. The smile disappeared so fast I almost admired it. Victor, standing behind her, said, "We were securing the property." From who? It was sitting empty. It's my house. My mother's chin lifted. Emma, now is not the time. No, I said quietly. I think it is exactly the time. Olivia stepped in then, all polished concern. Can we please not do this here? I turned to her. Did you know? Her eyes flickered. That was enough. Victor tried the practical route. No one is trying to hurt you. We're just handling things while you recover. I laughed once, brokenly. You signed paperwork to let me die while I recover. My mother's face went white. The room went dead silent. So there it was. The truth. No more smoke. No more staged tears. No more, we did our best. My mother stepped closer to the bed, lowering her voice. You have no idea what the doctors told us. I know what Hannah heard. That landed. For the first time, genuine panic moved across her face. Victor straightened. Who's Hannah? I did not answer. Olivia whispered. Mom. My mother cut her off with a look sharp enough to draw blood. Then she turned back to me, and in that instant all softness vanished. It was like watching somebody set down a mask they were tired of carrying. If you're going to be ungrateful, she said, then don't expect us to keep helping you. I stared at her. There it was again. The invoice. Even now. In the ICU. With bruises under my skin and stitches holding my life together. Everything was still a transaction. I leaned back against the pillow and looked her straight in the eye. Get out. After that visit, things became simpler. Painful, but simpler. Because once someone lets their real face stay uncovered long enough, you don't have to spend energy translating anymore. Adrian came to the hospital the next morning in a charcoal suit and carrying a slim briefcase that looked like it had ruined many dishonest people's afternoons. He was younger than I expected, maybe early 40s. Sharp-featured, steady, without unnecessary charm. He shook my hand lightly and set several documents on the tray table. I've reviewed the filings. And your mother is more reckless than I gave her credit for. Noah, who had become my unofficial bodyguard, closed the blinds and pulled up a chair. Adrian explained that Elaine had not completed a direct transfer yet. She had taken a different route first, claiming administrative necessity, temporarily gaining access to the property, inventorying contents, and preparing the ground for a broader challenge to Jasmine's intent based on undue influence and family expectation. In plain English, she was building a story where Grandma Jasmine had been confused, a story where Emma, the dutiful helper, had manipulated an old woman, a story where Elaine, the responsible daughter, was only trying to restore fairness. It would have been laughable if I hadn't known how many people prefer a clean lie over a messy truth. Can she win? I asked. Not if the evidence stays intact. Does it? He opened the briefcase. Inside were copies of medical competency notes, video witness statements from the will signing, Grandma's letters, bank logs, and a handwritten inventory Jasmine had made herself. She planned for a fight, Adrian said. And frankly, she planned well. Noah let out a breath. That sounds like Jasmine. I smiled through the ache in my chest. It does. Adrian continued. However, there is one complication. Of course there was. Victor contacted a lender. I stared at him. For what? Bridge financing secured against expected control of the property. Expected control? He represented that the house would be entering Elaine's authority shortly. Enough paperwork exists to make a bad lender interested. The room went very still. So they're borrowing against a house they don't own yet? Noah asked. Adrian's mouth tightened. In essence, yes. I almost admired the speed of it. Not the morality. Never that. But the speed. Grandma Jasmine had barely been gone, and already they were slicing up her memory like it was meat they were entitled to divide. What do we do? We move faster. That was when the plan began. Not revenge. Precision. Adrian filed emergency objections. He requested a hold against any title movement. He contacted the county recorder. He flagged the estate for dispute escalation. He arranged for certified notice to be hand-delivered, not mailed, because by now we all understood what my mother did with paper that threatened her. Meanwhile, I was discharged. Noah drove me not to my mother's house, despite the 10 dramatic voicemails she left, insisting I needed family around me, but to his small place in Maple Grove. One guest room, one squeaky hallway board, a kitchen full of practical food and exactly one plant somehow still alive under his care. You sure? I asked when he pulled into the driveway. He looked at me like I'd asked whether gravity was optional. Emma. That was answer enough. The first week out of the hospital was worse than waking up. Everyone forgets that part. Survival is not the dramatic moment. It's the humiliating little ones after. Trying to shower without falling. Trying to lower yourself onto a toilet without crying. Trying to sleep when your body has become a map of alarms. Trying to remember whether you took your pills or only thought about taking them. Noah never made me feel like a problem. He just adjusted. Moved slower. Spoke softer. Left tea outside the door when I napped. Sat in the living room at night pretending to watch bad television while really listening for whether my breathing changed. One evening, maybe 10 days after discharge, I asked the question I had been avoiding. Why did my mother do it? He didn't answer immediately, because there are questions people answer quickly only when they do not understand them. Finally, he said, I think your mother built her identity around control, and your grandmother leaving everything to you proved she never had as much of it as she thought. I stared at the dark window. That's not enough to kill someone. No. He looked at me. But entitlement mixed with panic does ugly math. Ugly math. That phrase stayed with me. Because that was exactly what had happened in the hospital. Not grief. Not confusion. Ugly math. If this story is hitting hard, type truth over image in the comments. Because some families don't break from hate. They break from performance. 3 days later, Olivia came alone. No makeup, no polished voice. No Jonathan. She stood on Noah's porch, looking like somebody who had been holding her breath for years and had only just noticed she was turning blue. I let her in. She sat at the kitchen table, twisting a ring around her finger, and for a full minute neither of us spoke. Then she said, Mom's going to fight you. I know. She says Grandma wasn't thinking clearly. She was. Olivia nodded once. I know. I waited. She started crying quietly. Not dramatically. Not in the way that asks to be rescued. Just quietly. I should have said something at the hospital. I said nothing. She told me it was mercy, Olivia whispered. She said the doctors believed you'd never be the same. She said keeping you alive would be selfish and cruel and expensive and… Olivia stopped, pressing her fingers against her mouth. I knew she was twisting it. I knew. I didn't stop her. And the house? Her eyes closed. Victor said if it went to you, everything Grandma built would be wasted. He said you'd sell it or give it away or let Noah influence you. She looked up at me. They made it sound like protecting the family. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. The family. Right. Olivia flinched. That almost made me feel sorry for her. Almost. Then she said the worst thing. Jonathan invested money assuming Mom would secure the house. I stared at her. Jonathan what? He moved funds into Victor's project because they thought once the estate was handled. I stood up too fast, and pain shot through my side so hard I had to brace against the counter. Noah was in the doorway in seconds. Emma. I waved him off, breathing through it. Then I looked at Olivia with a clarity so cold it frightened even me. So this wasn't just about control. She started crying harder. It was about money. She did not deny it. That night, Adrian called after hearing the new detail. They're cornered, he said. That makes them more dangerous, not less. What does that mean? It means your mother will try to take this public before the documents do. She'll spin. She'll recruit sympathy. She'll make you sound unstable, influenced, traumatized. You need to be ready. I thought about Willow Creek, about church, about the women who hugged my mother after funerals, about the men who shook Victor's hand after service, about how quickly communities side with whatever story sounds cleaner. What if I tell the truth first? I asked. Adrian was quiet. Then, do you want the legal answer or the human one? Both. Legally, careful, humanly. He exhaled. Your grandmother once told me this family only respects a truth once it is spoken in a room they can't control. I knew the room immediately. The Grand Marlowe Hotel. That was where the Carter Foundation held its annual community benefit dinner. My mother chaired it after Grandma Jasmine stepped back. Donors attended. Church leaders attended. Business owners attended. Everyone who ever admired the Carter name would be there, including my mother, including Victor, including Olivia. And exactly where they expected admiration, I was going to give them history. The benefit dinner was 6 days away. That gave us just enough time to prepare and not enough time to feel safe. Adrian hated the idea at first. As your attorney, I strongly prefer courtrooms to ballrooms. As the woman they tried to erase, I said, I strongly prefer witnesses. He pinched the bridge of his nose like I was giving him a headache he respected. Noah, traitor that he was, hid a smile. In the end, Adrian agreed, not because he loved the setting, but because he understood what I did. My mother's power depended on curated rooms. Rooms with glassware and donor lists and smiling introductions. Rooms where no one interrupted her version of events. If the truth was going to cut through, it had to cut there. The days leading up to the dinner felt unreal. Pain medication, legal calls, flashbacks, ice packs, paperwork, a body still healing, and a mind trying to decide whether public exposure was courage or self-destruction. At night, I dreamed of hospital lights and woke sweating. By day, I practiced standing without swaying. Noah stayed maddeningly calm. He bought me a dark blue dress because I was too exhausted to shop and too proud to admit it. You need something that says alive but not forgiving, he said, holding up 2 options in a store I never would have entered alone. I actually laughed. The dress fit, that felt like a miracle. 2 days before the dinner, Hannah came by Noah's place after shift with printed copies of the incident documentation related to my case. Redacted where necessary. Clean, time-stamped, clinical, brutal in their simplicity. Thought you might need receipts, she said. She smelled like hospital sanitizer and peppermint gum. Why are you doing this for me? I asked. She looked offended by the question. Because I have a daughter your age, and because too many decent women spend years being edited by people who don't deserve the pen. I think about that sentence a lot. Being edited. That was my mother's gift, really. Not love, not warmth. Editing, trimming me down until I fit whatever role made her look best. The burdened daughter, the dutiful helper, the emotional one, the one who owed, the one who stayed quiet. But people forget something about editing. Eventually, if you cut enough, there's nothing left to control. The morning of the dinner, Olivia called. I almost didn't answer. When I did, her voice was raw. Please don't do this tonight. You mean please don't tell the truth in front of the people Mom has been lying to. She'll implode. I looked out Noah's kitchen window at the gray sky settling over Maple Grove. She should have considered that before signing a paper to let me die. Olivia started crying again. She had become very good at crying once consequences approached. I noticed that. I'm trying to fix this. No, I said quietly. You're trying to survive it. She had no answer. That evening, Noah drove. Adrian met us there. The Grand Marlowe glowed with chandeliers and polished brass, and the kind of old money atmosphere designed to make selfish people feel tasteful. At the entrance, a banner read, "The Jasmine Carter Community Legacy Dinner." I stood there staring at my grandmother's name in gold script and felt something inside me go very still. My mother had used her name. Of course she had. Inside, the ballroom was already half full. Men in suits, women in silk, laughter rising in curated bursts, waiters gliding around with trays, a string quartet near the far wall. Everything elegant enough to hide rot for one more hour. Elaine Carter was near the stage in emerald green, one hand resting lightly on the podium, smiling at donors like she had invented grace. Victor stood nearby, managing logistics, or appearing to. Jonathan was at a table near the front, Olivia beside him, pale and rigid. When my mother saw me, her face changed so quickly it was almost invisible. Shock, fear, calculation. Then the smile returned. She approached with both arms slightly open. "Emma." Oh my goodness. I stepped back before she could touch me. Her arms fell. Victor arrived at her side, like backup dressed as a husband. "We didn't expect you," he said. That was the idea. My mother's smile sharpened. "This really isn't the night." "No," I said, looking around the ballroom. "I think it's exactly the night." For a second, her eyes lost all softness. "Do not embarrass this family." I held her gaze. "You should have thought of that in the ICU." She went white. Victor leaned in. "You're emotional. You're recovering. Don't make a scene you'll regret." That's generous, coming from a man who tried to borrow against my grandmother's house before the estate even settled. His face changed then. Not anger. Exposure. Noah stepped closer to my side. Adrian appeared as if conjured. My mother looked from one to the other and understood, perhaps for the first time, that tonight would not be one of her rooms. The program began at 7:30. Donor acknowledgements, a foundation video, smiling photographs of community service. Grandma Jasmine's face appeared on a giant screen behind the stage and the room applauded. I nearly broke, not because I was weak, because they had turned a good woman into scenery. Then my mother took the podium. No one commanded admiration like Elaine when she had a microphone and a false narrative. She thanked sponsors, honored volunteers, spoke of legacy, compassion, dignity, and the sacred bonds of family. That word again. Family. Then she said, voice thick with manufactured feeling, "This has been an especially difficult season for our family. As many of you know, my daughter Emma recently suffered a terrible accident. By God's mercy, she is with us tonight." Polite applause. Then she smiled toward my table. "Emma, sweetheart, would you stand so we can celebrate your recovery?" I stood. The ballroom turned. And in that instant, I knew my mother had made the fatal mistake herself. She had handed me the room. If you're still with me, this is the moment to hit subscribe, because from here on, nobody in that ballroom would ever hear the Carter name the same way again. I did not sit back down. Instead, I picked up my folder and started walking toward the stage. My mother's face froze. The room kept applauding for 2 more seconds before confusion replaced courtesy. I stepped onto the stage in a blue dress, with healing bruises still faint along my collarbone and enough pain in my side to remind me I was not dreaming. "Emma?" My mother said into the mic, still smiling, still trying. I held out my hand. "May I?" In front of 200 guests, she could not refuse without looking cruel. Slowly, she gave me the microphone. It was warm from her hand. I looked out over the ballroom. Then I said very clearly, "Thank you. Since we're honoring legacy tonight, I think my grandmother deserves the truth. Silence has weight. That's something people don't talk about enough. When a room full of rich, polite, well-dressed people all realize they may be standing at the edge of something ugly, silence becomes almost physical. You can feel it settle across shoulders, hear it inside breathing. That ballroom went silent exactly like that. My mother stepped back from the podium, but not far. Victor moved closer to the stage stairs. Jonathan stared at me like a man calculating whether association was about to become expensive. Olivia looked as if her bones had turned to water. I kept my eyes on the audience. "My grandmother, Jasmine Carter, was the most honest person I've ever known," I said. "And if she were alive tonight, she would not allow her name to be used to hide what happened to me." A few people shifted in their seats. I saw church faces, donors, old neighbors, women who had eaten at our table, men who had praised Victor's business instincts, people who thought they knew us. My family has told many of you that after my accident, they stayed by my side and made loving decisions under impossible circumstances. I paused. That is not true. You could hear silverware touch china at a table near the back. My mother found her voice first. Emma, honey. No, I said, not loudly, but sharply enough that she stopped. You've had the microphone for years. I turned back to the audience. When I was unconscious, the hospital recommended further treatment. It was difficult, but not hopeless. My mother and stepfather were told that. Instead of fighting for me, they argued cost, quality of life, and burden. My throat tightened, but I did not let the words shake. My mother signed paperwork limiting life-saving intervention before my proxy arrived. A murmur moved through the room. My mother took one step toward me. That is a twisted interpretation. It is documented. I lifted the folder. Would you like timestamps? That landed harder than shouting would have. People trust calm more than rage. My mother had taught me that by using it as a weapon. Tonight I used it better. Victor climbed the first stair. Adrian appeared at the bottom before he could take the second. Sir, Adrian said pleasantly, I would advise against that. Victor stopped. I kept going. My best friend Noah was my legal proxy, not my family. He authorized the treatment that saved my life, not because he wanted drama, because he wanted me alive. I turned slightly toward Noah where he stood near the back of the ballroom. He didn't wave, didn't preen, just stood there, hands at his sides, looking steady enough to anchor a ship. While I was still in the hospital, my mother and stepfather entered my grandmother's home, changed the locks, and began trying to control property that did not belong to them. Now the room reacted audibly. One woman actually gasped. Another turned toward Elaine in open disbelief. My mother's polished mask finally cracked. That house was family property, she snapped. And your grandmother was manipulated in the last year of her life. There it was, the script. Adrian stepped forward then, not onto center stage, but close enough to be seen. My name is Adrian Cole, he said. I represented Jasmine Carter in all final estate matters. She was fully competent, witnessed, recorded, unambiguous. The property in question was left solely to Emma Carter. The words solely changed the room. You could feel it. Because the ugly little engine beneath all this had never been grief. It was entitlement colliding with disappointment. Victor spoke this time, voice tight. This is neither the place nor the context for legal debate. No, I said, looking at him directly for the first time all evening. But it is exactly the place to stop my grandmother's name from being used by people who betrayed her. Jonathan stood up halfway, then sat back down when he realized no one else was moving with him. That tiny moment told me everything about the state of their alliances. I went on. There's more. My stepfather sought financial leverage based on anticipated control of my grandmother's property before the estate dispute was resolved. Victor's face blanched. My mother hissed. Emma. I looked at her. No, Mom. You don't get to use that voice with me anymore. For a second, I forgot the room and saw only her. The woman who corrected my tone at 12 while ignoring Olivia's cruelty. The woman who accepted my help as tribute and called it love. The woman who taught me to apologize for having needs before I even knew what mine were, and suddenly I wasn't angry. Not in the hot way. I was done. There is power in being done. I spent years thinking I owed this family for being less easy to love than Olivia, I said. And I heard Olivia inhale sharply. Years thinking that if I worked harder, gave more, needed less, one day I would finally be treated like I belonged. But a person should not have to audition for their own mother. No one moved. Even the waiters had stopped. I am not telling you this because I want pity. I'm telling you because every person in this room has been asked to donate to legacy, integrity, and family values in my grandmother's name. And the people currently speaking for that legacy tried to override her wishes and erase me while I was unconscious. My mother's eyes were glittering now, not with tears, but with fury. Real fury. The kind she used to save for private rooms. You ungrateful girl, she said. The ballroom heard it. All of it. The contempt. The ownership. The years. I let the silence answer for me. Then Olivia stood up. Her chair scraped loudly against the floor. Everyone turned. She looked sick, pale, shaking. But for the first time in my life, she looked like she had chosen something before knowing whether it would benefit her. She's telling the truth. The room exploded into whispers. My mother spun toward her. Olivia. But Olivia kept going, voice trembling. I was at the hospital. I knew what Mom was doing. I knew Victor was talking about the house. I knew. And I didn't stop it. Tears slid down her face. Emma's telling the truth. Jonathan stood up fully this time, staring at his wife like he no longer recognized the marriage he was sitting inside. Victor muttered, "For God's sake." Olivia looked at him with a hatred so old it startled me. No, for once, not for God's sake. For hers. Then she sat down like her legs had given up. I think that was the moment the room turned completely. Because one accusation can be framed, two become weather. And truth, once it starts collecting witnesses, becomes very difficult to stuff back in a box. My mother stepped toward me again, and this time her voice dropped low, vicious, intimate. You have always been jealous. I almost laughed, there in front of 200 people, with my grandmother's name projected behind us in gold light. That was still the story she chose. Not regret. Not horror. Not even denial worth respecting. Jealousy. So I answered her gently. No, Mom. I was hungry. There's a difference. If this line hit you, remember it. Some people call your pain jealousy because admitting your neglect would condemn them. Then I set the microphone down. I thought that was the end. It wasn't. Because Pastor David, who had been seated near the H. Poncer table, stood up and said the words my mother least expected to hear in public. Elaine, I think you owe everyone in this room an explanation. My mother did not answer Pastor David. At least not at first. She stood at the side of the podium, breathing hard through her nose, one hand gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles went white. Victor moved toward her, but she shrugged him off. It was the first visible crack in their united front. When people lose control publicly, they don't always shatter. Sometimes they cycle. Denial, anger, appeal, blame. My mother tried all four in under 5 minutes. This is private, she said first. No one accepted that. She's traumatized, she said next. That failed too. Then, to my astonishment, she started crying. Not beautifully, not effectively. Just suddenly. I did what I thought was best, she said into the open room, voice wobbling. The doctors made it sound hopeless. I was scared. I might have believed that if fear had not worn greed's shoes every step of the way. Adrian spoke calmly. The medical recommendation does not support that characterization. Victor snapped. No one asked you. Adrian's expression barely changed. Legally, quite a few people have. That line nearly made Noah smile. Around the ballroom, conversations broke out in little clusters. People turning to each other, recalling, reassessing. You could actually watch the social architecture shift in real time, admiration turning to distance, loyalty turning to discomfort. Jonathan walked away from Olivia's table and toward the bar. He did not come back. My mother saw it, and something in her face hardened all over again. Tears vanished. Fury returned. Then she did what she always did when threatened. She turned on me. You were never satisfied, she said, voice carrying even without the mic. Never. Jasmine coddled you. Everyone coddled you. Olivia worked for what she has. You played martyr and got rewarded for it. There it was. The family religion. That care is indulgence if it goes to the wrong child. That sacrifice counts only when the golden one makes it. That the useful daughter should remain useful, grateful, and unseen. I looked at her and felt the past detach itself from my throat one memory at a time. The forgotten birthdays, the backhanded compliments, way she'd tell Olivia not to worry about Emma. She's sturdy. The way sturdiness had always been her excuse to neglect me. You are proving my point, I said. Victor stepped in then, not to comfort her, but to salvage himself. We entered the property because the estate looked unstable. That was prudence, not theft. Adrian lifted a brow. Then I assume you will have no problem explaining the financing inquiries. Victor's face changed. The room noticed. Pastor David noticed. And in communities built on reputation, noticing is sometimes the beginning of exile. One of the board members from the foundation, a woman named Evelyn Moore, stood from a front table, elegant, silver-haired, blunt in the way wealthy women get when they're done being managed. "Elaine," she said, "did you or did you not attempt to control Jasmine's estate against her written wishes?" My mother said nothing. Evelyn did not repeat herself. She simply looked around the room and said, "Then the board needs an emergency review tonight." That was the real blow. Not my speech. Not the whispers. The institutional turn. Because private cruelty survives in shadows, but public status survives only by collective agreement. And in that moment, agreement was withdrawing. Olivia came to stand beside me. I tensed instinctively. She noticed. "Forgive me," she whispered. "I don't." She nodded once. "I know." We stood there anyway, not as sisters restored, but as two women finally refusing to hold up the same lie. Then something unexpected happened. An older donor couple approached the stage. Then another. Then one of the nurses from a church health outreach committee I used to volunteer with years ago. No one made a speech. They just came close enough to signal which side of the truth they believed. My mother saw it. It devastated her far more than anything I had said, because admiration had always been her oxygen, and she was watching the room learn how to breathe without her story. Afterward, security did not remove anyone. That would have been cleaner. Instead, the event simply collapsed in slow motion. Tables buzzed. Sponsors left early. The quartet packed up before dessert. Board members disappeared with Evelyn into a side room. Jonathan texted Olivia from the parking lot that he was going home alone. Cowardly, but consistent. My mother cornered me near the lobby 10 minutes later. No cameras, no donors, no audience. Just us. For the first time since childhood, I noticed how tired she looked when she wasn't performing. Not softer, not sadder, just older. Small in a way she would have considered insulting. "You think this makes you righteous?" she asked. "No. You think Jasmine loved you more?" I answered honestly. "I think she trusted me more. That hurt her." I saw it land. "She turned you against me." "No," I said. "You did that yourself, one invoice at a time." Victor appeared behind her, but before he could speak, Noah stepped between us with an ease so natural it made my chest ache for reasons unrelated to injury. Conversation's over. My mother looked from him to me and laughed once bitterly. "Of course. Him. That's what this really is." I almost rolled my eyes. "You need me to be manipulated because you can't imagine I'd choose myself on purpose." Her mouth tightened. That was the last clean truth I gave her. Then I walked away. Outside, the night air hit cold and wet. I stood under the hotel awning while Noah brought the car around. Olivia came out a minute later, barefoot, heels in one hand. "Jonathan left," she said. I looked at her. She gave a humorless laugh. Apparently, scandal is unattractive. I should have felt satisfaction. Mostly, I felt tired. "What are you going to do?" she asked. "Sleep, then testify, then heal." She nodded like she deserved none of that answer. Before she turned away, she said one thing I didn't expect. "Grandma knew I wouldn't choose right until it cost me." I studied her face. "She left you a letter too, didn't she?" Olivia looked startled, then she nodded. "What did it say?" Tears filled her eyes again. "She said loving me was easy. Respecting my choices wasn't." Then she walked into the dark parking lot alone. On the drive back to Maple Grove, I sat in silence, looking out at wet streetlights and thinking about how endings are rarely clean. No triumphant music, no instant peace, no magical repair of every wound. Just aftermath. Just the body slowly coming down from survival. Noah drove with one hand on the wheel. After a while, he asked, "You okay?" I thought about lying. Then I said the truest thing. "No, but I think I'm finally real." He glanced at me, then back at the road. "That's a start." It was more than a start. It was the first honest ground I had stood on in years. The fallout started before sunrise. By 8 the next morning, 3 board members had resigned from the Carter Foundation pending review. By 9:30, Evelyn Moore had called for a freeze on all public fundraising under Jasmine Carter's name until serious ethical concerns were addressed. By noon, half of Willow Creek knew some version of the story, and the other half was pretending not to ask. My mother's calls went unanswered more often than not. Victor's business partner requested documents. Jonathan met with an attorney. And the church, the one place my mother had always assumed would preserve her image, released a brief, careful statement asking for prayer, truth, and accountability. That word again. Accountability. Such a polite word for the sound of a lifetime coming apart. Adrian moved fast. The legal machinery that had felt abstract in the hospital now became concrete. Depositions were scheduled. Estate protections formalized. Financing inquiries exposed. Every false step my family took while I was unconscious became part of a chain no amount of polished storytelling could break. I gave my statement 3 weeks later in Adrian's office. I wore a cream sweater. My scars still pulled when I sat too long. My voice shook only once, when asked about the hospital decision, not because I was uncertain, because naming betrayal under oath feels like peeling skin. Olivia also gave a statement. I did not go in with her. I did not wait outside after. Forgiveness and cooperation are not the same thing. A lot of people confuse them. Months passed. Healing is boring in way. Trauma never is. Physical therapy. Follow-up scans. Medication tapering. Days that felt almost normal, until they suddenly didn't. Grief sneaking in through grocery stores, songs, the smell of lemon tea, a porch swing seen from a passing car. Grandma Jasmine's house was eventually secured in my name exactly as she intended. When Adrian handed me the final papers, he smiled for the first time since I'd met him. She was formidable, he said. She was. She'd be proud of how you handled this. I looked down at the documents. I wasn't graceful. No, Adrian said. You were clear, that's rarer. I moved into the house in early autumn. Brook Hollow looked different when it belonged to me. Not larger, not shinier. Just quieter. More honest, somehow. The morning light in the kitchen fell across the counters exactly the way it used to when Grandma made toast and pretended not to watch birds out the window. Her lavender sachets still lived in some drawers. Her teacups still lined the cabinet. Her cardigan was still hanging behind the pantry door the first week, and I stood there with it in both hands and cried like the months had never passed. Noah helped me paint the back room, not because it needed it, because it was easier to start with walls than memory. He brought sandwiches, terrible playlists, and exactly zero pressure. One afternoon while we were repainting what had once been Jasmine's small office, I found myself laughing, really laughing. Paint on my wrist, hair tied badly, music skipping, Noah making a face because he had stepped in the tray. I stopped laughing as suddenly as it started. He noticed. What? I shook my head. I haven't done that in a long time. Laughed? Without earning it first. He set the roller down. Then, very gently, he said, You never had to. That nearly undid me more than the hospital had. Because that was the real inheritance, wasn't it? Not only the house. Permission. Permission to stop proving I deserved softness. As for my mother, the version I heard was this. Victor left first, at least financially, distance before divorce, then likely both. Jonathan separated from Olivia for a time. The foundation removed Elaine permanently. Church women who once orbited her now crossed streets more slowly, not cruelly, just carefully. She did not vanish. People like my mother rarely do. They simply become smaller in rooms that once expanded for them. Olivia sent letters twice. I answered neither. Not from hatred. From timing. Some doors are not slammed, they are simply not opened yet. And me? I went back to work part-time. Then more. Patients still scared me sometimes in a new way. Code alarms made my hands cold. Certain signatures on forms made my stomach turn. But I stayed. Maybe because I knew too well what it meant to need one person in a room to care correctly. I became that person more deliberately after. People call stories like mine inspiring when they don't know what else to call survival. I don't love that word. Survival is not pretty. It is not clean. It is not noble every second. Sometimes it is bitter and exhausted and petty and numb. Sometimes it is standing in your grandmother's kitchen at midnight eating cereal from a mug because grief and peace have decided to sit down together at last. But if I have learned anything, it is this. Being loved poorly can train you to mistake endurance for devotion. It can make you believe silence is maturity, accommodation is kindness, erasure is humility. It can make you think your greatest virtue is how much pain you can carry without complaint. That is not love. That is conditioning. Grandma Jasmine did not save me by dying. She saved me by seeing clearly before she did. By putting truth in writing. By refusing to let the loudest people in the family become the final storytellers. And maybe that's the part I want to leave with you. Not be strong. Not forgive quickly. Not family is everything. No. This. Family is not the people most offended by your boundaries. Family is the people who protect your life when there is nothing to gain from it. Noah was family, Hannah was family, Grandma Jasmine was family, and the version of me that finally stopped apologizing for taking up space? She became family too. So yes, I survived the accident. Yes, I survived the betrayal. But the real miracle was smaller and harder and far more human than that. I survived becoming honest. And once I did, my mother could no longer edit me. And maybe that's where most stories would end, in that quiet sense of peace after everything has settled. But life doesn't really end like that. It continues in small, almost invisible ways. And it was in one of those ordinary moments that I realized something had truly changed. I was standing behind the counter at the cafe, doing the same things I had done every day. And for the first time, there was no tension in my chest. No quiet pressure in my mind. No feeling that I needed to be somewhere else or become someone else. There was just stillness, and instead of feeling empty, it felt full. I looked around at the cafe, at the people, at the light coming through the windows, and I understood something simple but powerful. This wasn't temporary anymore. This was my life, not something I had to prove, not something I had to earn, just something I had chosen. And that realization didn't come with excitement, it came with acceptance. For so long, I had measured myself by how useful I was, by how much I could give, by how well I could fit into what others needed. But standing there, I realized I didn't need to do that anymore. Because my life didn't belong to their expectations anymore. It belonged to me. Later that day, I caught my reflection in the glass, and for a moment, I just stood there looking at myself, not critically, not searching for what was missing. Just looking, and I realized I had spent years trying to become someone worth seeing, when in reality, I had always been that person. I had just been surrounded by people who couldn't recognize it. And that didn't make me angry. It made me free. Because once you understand that your value was never the problem, you stop trying to change yourself to fit into places that were never meant for you, and you start choosing places that reflect who you already are. That night, I walked down to the beach again, the ocean steady in front of me. And as I looked at the horizon, I understood why it mattered to me, because it wasn't an ending, it was a meeting point, a place where things could exist together without canceling each other out. Just like my life, my past didn't disappear, my family didn't vanish, but they no longer defined me. And that made all the difference, because for the first time, I wasn't becoming someone. I already was. I wasn't invisible. I was just in a place where I wasn't seen. And the moment I stepped out of that place, everything changed. Not all at once, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to build something real. Enough to choose myself. And if you're listening to this, I want you to remember one thing. You don't have to earn your place in a life that was never meant for you. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is walk away quietly and choose yourself. Because the truth is, you were never just there. You were always more. You just needed to see it. And now, you do.